What if I told you that 87% of apps lose 77% of their users within just 3 days? And what's interesting about that is this almost never happens because the apps lack the features that actually solve the user's problems, or because the marketing is bad, or because users simply don't care enough. In most cases, apps fail because of bad user onboarding. And the part that most founders don't realize, onboarding is one of the easiest things to improve once you understand what makes users stay in the first place. So in this video, I'm gonna walk you through 5 onboarding strategies used by world-class apps to hook users almost immediately and make them want to come back again and again. Every example I'm going to share today is grounded in human psychology research, but it's also based on my experience launching over 250 apps, including working with giants in the space like TikTok. So let's start with the first one, because this is where almost everything else begins. Think about those sample booths that you've seen in the grocery stores like Costco. You walk in planning to buy something completely different, and then somebody hands you a little spoon with something random in it that you had no intention of buying, but the moment you taste it, everything clicks. There's no pitch, no pressure, no explanation of the ingredients. The product does all the convincing on its own. That moment of clarity is exactly what your onboarding should create for users. But sadly, most apps do the opposite. They immediately ask users to sign up, create an account, choose preferences, grant permissions, and sit through walkthroughs before the user has gotten any benefit from the platform, all before the user has felt one single benefit of the app. Great onboarding flips this order completely. A really good example of this is the app Breathwork. Instead of explaining what the app does, they guide users straight into a breathing session as part of the onboarding, without asking them to configure anything or explaining how the app works. Within seconds, the user feels calmer. This works because of what's known as the eureka effect, which is the moment where something suddenly makes sense because you experience it, not because it was explained to you. When users feel the core value of your app within 60 seconds of downloading it, retention increases dramatically because their brain immediately understands why the app exists. So instead of telling users what the app does, let them feel what it does. If you build something that is genuinely valuable, one small taste is usually enough to spark that curiosity and intrigue. The real takeaway here is that your app should surface the core value in the onboarding, ideally before you ask the users to commit to anything at all. Now, once users feel that initial value, the next mistake that founders make is showing too much too fast. And this is where doing less actually helps your users do more. If you have ever built IKEA furniture, you already understand this intuitively. There's a reason the instructions guide you through one tiny step at a time, because if you saw all 12 steps all at once on one page, you'd probably give up before you ever got started. Multi-step tasks are only finishable if they feel finishable. This is tied to a psychological principle called the Zeigarnik effect, which shows that once users start something, they're much more likely to finish something as long as the next step feels manageable. This is why Stomper's app's onboarding flow works so well. So when users open the app for the first time, they're guided through a few simple steps that explain the essentials without requiring input or effort from the user and without overwhelming them with options. Sometimes onboarding isn't so much about doing things, it's about mentally preparing the user to make the experience manageable. Because remember, they've never used your app before. It's novel, it's going to be unfamiliar, and therefore can be intimidating. If the onboarding leaves the user thinking, yeah, I can handle this, then you've already won. The key here is to reduce the cognitive load by breaking the onboarding into small, approachable steps, only showing the users exactly what they need right now to get started and saving everything else for later. Once those users feel comfortable, the next step is to get them engaged in a way that actually sticks. When you learn to ride a bike, nobody gave you a manual and said, go memorize this before trying. They put you on the bike, gave you a push, and let you figure it out as you went. And that's exactly how the Sudoku app handles onboarding. Instead of explaining the rules, it drops the users right into their first puzzle with a little light guidance, allowing them to learn by interacting with the product itself. This works because humans learn much faster when they actively engage with something rather than passively consuming it, a concept known as trial and error learning. When users interact with your product during onboarding, information retention increases and bounce rates decrease because actions create understanding. If your core flow is simple enough, letting users use it immediately is often more effective than explaining it. The goal isn't to teach the users every function of your app. The goal is to make them feel capable of using it. Now, once the users understand how the product works, there's another layer that makes everything feel more personal. Think about the first time that you sit in a new car. Almost without thinking, you adjust the seat, the mirrors, and the steering wheel until it feels just right. And those small changes make the space feel more comfortable and more yours. The same feeling of ownership can happen during your user user onboarding. Speechify does this really well by guiding users early on through choosing their voice tone, reading speed, and highlight preferences, instead of just listing off their features. By asking users what works for them, the app activates a familiarity principle, which signals to the human brain trust and engage more with this platform that's personalized, even if that personalization is subtle. The faster your product can feel like it belongs to a user, the more likely they are to stick around. So giving your users control early on, even in little ways, helps create that emotional attachment much sooner. Finally, there's one last piece that can either reinforce all this momentum or completely destroy it. Anyone who's filled out a long government forms know how painful it can feel when there's no sense of progress, no indication of how long it will take, and no visible end in sight. Compare that to seeing something like step 2 of 5, which immediately reduces anxiety and increases the likelihood that you'll keep going. Progress indicators are powerful because they motivate the user to continue. Marathon, a social TV watching app, uses a simple progress bar during the onboarding, which isn't flashy, but it's enough to signal movement and momentum. This works because of the peak end goal and the goal gradient effect, which shows that people push harder when they know that they're close to finishing something. That said, there's an important balance here. If your onboarding has too many steps, revealing them all up front can backfire because they see this long list before they can start experiencing value, and that triggers resistance. That's why apps like Typeform by default don't show you all the steps on longer forms. The goal is to show just enough progress to build momentum without overwhelming the users before they felt the actual benefit of your app. At the end of the day, building a great onboarding is not impressing users with all kinds of features and functionalities, which ultimately just translate to complexity in their mind. It's about guiding them into value, building confidence, and creating small emotional wins early on. When you do that well, retention becomes a natural outcome. If you enjoyed this breakdown, you'll probably enjoy the other videos on my channel. So please, if you're interested and you like it, click like, subscribe, support another founder like yourself, and I'll see you soon. Until then, go build something great.